In front of her friends, she boasted, "If he left me, I'd have 10 guys lined up." They all laughed. I just replied, "All right then, let's put that to the test." I left that night. A year later, she was still waiting and watching me build a life without her. The conversation, if you can even call it that, happened at a dinner party at our apartment. It was one of those nights where my girlfriend Ashley insisted on showing off. New dress, new wine glasses, a new set of friends she'd acquired from her trendy yoga studio. I never liked her yoga friends. They were a flock of carbon copy women who all spoke in the same Bray, vocal fry accent and seemed to communicate entirely through backhanded compliments and passive-aggressive jabs. I was in the kitchen pulling the roast out of the oven when I heard Ashley's voice rise above the chatter in the living room. She was holding court as she often did, telling some exaggerated story about a vacation we'd taken. I could hear the fake tinkling laughter of her friends. I tuned it out, focusing on getting the dinner plates ready. Then I heard my name. One of the friends, a particularly catty woman named Madison, asked a question loud enough for the whole room to hear. "But what would you do if a guy like Chris Hemsworth tried to hit on you, Ashley? Would you really turn him down for Dave?" It was a stupid, childish question, but it was also a test. A loyalty test right there in front of a dozen people. I paused in the kitchen listening. Ashley's laugh was loud and dismissive. "Oh my God, Maddie, are you kidding? If Chris Hemsworth even looked in my direction, I'd be gone. Dave knows the deal." Then came the line that changed everything. She wasn't just laughing now. She was bragging, her voice full of a smug, arrogant confidence that made my stomach turn. "Seriously, though," she said, her voice dropping into a conspiratorial tone, "if he ever left me, I wouldn't even be sad. I'd have 10 guys waiting in line by the end of the day. 10 at least." Her friends erupted in a chorus of supportive, cackling laughter. They thought it was hilarious, empowering even. I stood in the kitchen holding a hot roasting pan and felt a profound, chilling sense of clarity. For 5 years, I had been building a life with a woman who saw me not as a partner, but as a placeholder, a comfortable, reliable option she'd keep around until something better came along. The 10 guys weren't a hypothetical. They were her backup plan, her safety net, the audience she was constantly performing for. I didn't storm out of the kitchen. I didn't yell. I took a deep breath, composed myself, and walked into the living room, a polite plastic smile on my face. I placed the roast on the dining table. Ashley looked at me, her eyes shining with the thrill of her own performance. "There he is," she announced as if presenting a well-behaved pet. I looked at her, then at her friends, their faces still flushed with laughter at my expense. "That's an interesting theory," I said, my voice calm and even. Ashley's smile faltered slightly. "What theory?" "The one about the 10 guys," I said, looking directly into her eyes. "Let's test it." The room went silent. The laughter died in their throats. Ashley just stared at me, her mouth slightly agape, the confident bravado draining from her face. "What are you talking about, Dave?" she finally stammered. I picked up my jacket from the back of a chair. I took up keys and my wallet from the small bowl by the door. "I'm talking about me leaving," I said, my voice as flat and hard as a granite countertop. "So, you can start making your calls. Your 10 guys are now officially on the clock." I walked out the door and didn't look back. I left them there in my apartment with my food in the middle of a dinner party that had just become awake. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I was never coming back. Update 1. The first night of my new life was spent in a sterile, anonymous hotel room downtown. I didn't sleep. I just sat in the dark. The silence of the room, a stark contrast to the chaos I had just unleashed. My phone started blowing up almost immediately. First, it was Ashley. A frantic barrage of texts and calls. "What was that? Are you serious? Dave, come back right now. This isn't funny. You're really going to end our 5-year relationship over a stupid joke?" I didn't answer. Then came the calls from her friends. The same women who had been laughing at me an hour earlier, now leaving concerned, confused voicemails. I ignored those too. I'm a software engineer. My brain is wired for logic, for systems, for finding the most efficient solution to a problem. And my problem was that I had spent 5 years of my life building a shared infrastructure with a person who had just proven to be a catastrophic security risk. It was time to decommission the server. The next morning, I began the process of systematically disentangling my life from hers. I was methodical. I was ruthless. I was a machine executing a script. First, the finances. We had a joint checking account and a joint savings account. I was the primary earner by a significant margin. I went to my bank and opened a new set of accounts in my name only. I calculated my total post-tax contributions to our joint accounts over the past 5 years and transferred that exact amount to my new accounts. I left her contributions and a generous portion of the shared growth in the old accounts. I wasn't trying to leave her destitute. I was just taking back what was mine. Next, the apartment. We lived in a condo that I owned, a place I had bought and paid for long before I met her. She was not on the deed or the mortgage. She was, in the eyes of the law, a tenant with no lease. I had my lawyer draft a formal eviction notice. I hired a process server to deliver it to her at the apartment the next day. Then I went on the offensive. Ashley was a social media influencer, a job that consisted of her posting heavily filtered photos of our life and promoting dubious wellness products. Her entire identity, her entire sense of self-worth was tied to the public performance of our relationship. I had always been a reluctant participant in her online theater, the boring, stable boyfriend in the background of her glamorous shots. It was time for my character to be written out of the show. I went through every one of my own social media accounts and scrubbed them clean of her. Every photo, every tag, every mention. It was a digital eraser. Then I posted a single simple statement on my own page, a page that was followed by most of our mutual friends. For those who have been asking, Ashley and I are no longer together. The decision was mine, and it is final. I wish her the best in all her future endeavors. I didn't give a reason. I didn't engage in the drama. I just stated the fact coolly and professionally, like a corporate press release announcing a change in leadership. The effect was immediate. The narrative she had been trying to spin, that I was a jealous, overreacting boyfriend who had thrown a tantrum over a joke, was immediately undercut by my calm, definitive statement. The real blow, however, was yet to come. Ashley had always been obsessed with her car, a luxury convertible she couldn't possibly afford on her own. The car was leased, and while she made the monthly payments from our joint account, the lease itself was co-signed by me. My credit, my income, was the only reason she had been approved for it. I called the leasing company. I explained that I was no longer in a relationship with the primary driver and that I was formally requesting to have my name removed as the co-signer. The representative told me that was not possible without a full credit reevaluation of the primary leaseholder. He told me that given Ashley's stated income, it was highly unlikely she would be approved on her own. I told him I understood and that I would no longer be guaranteeing the payments. I knew this would trigger a clause in the lease agreement. The company would have no choice but to repossess the vehicle. It was only a matter of time. Update 2. The eviction notice was served on a Monday. According to the process server, Ashley was at the apartment with Madison, her head bridesmaid in the army of yoga babble harpies. They refused to accept the papers, so the server left them taped to the door. Ashley's reaction was predictable. She and her friends launched a full-scale smear campaign. I was painted as a fragile, insecure man with a bruised ego. The story of the dinner party was twisted into a narrative where I was the villain, a man who couldn't take a joke and who had cruelly thrown his loving, devoted girlfriend out on the street. But their campaign had a fatal flaw. Me. I refused to play the game. I didn't respond to their posts. I didn't defend myself to mutual friends. I just maintained a dignified professional silence. My one public statement stood on its own, a rock of calm in their sea of manufactured drama. And the more they raged, the more unhinged they looked. The real consequences began to land about a week later. The first was the car. A tow truck showed up at our apartment building one afternoon and repossessed the convertible. There was a scene, of course. Ashley and Madison apparently screamed at the driver, filmed him on their phones, and threatened to sue. The driver, A man who had undoubtedly seen it all before, just calmly hooked up the car and drove away. Ashley was now without her primary status symbol. She was also without a way to get to her endless stream of brunches, yoga classes, and influencer events. The next blow was financial. The money in the joint accounts, which she had been using to fund her lifestyle, began to run out. The rent on the apartment, which I had stopped paying, was coming due. The credit cards which were in my name were canceled. The comfortable, easy life she had always taken for granted was beginning to crumble. She tried to fight the eviction. Of course, she got a lawyer, probably paid for by her parents, who argued that she was an established resident and that I had no right to kick her out. My lawyer simply presented the deed to the apartment in my name only and a detailed financial accounting of our shared expenses, which showed that I had paid for over 90% of our life together. The judge gave her 30 days to move out. It was during that time her 10 guys waiting claim finally faced reality. She was single now, a free agent, but the crowd of admirers she was so sure of never showed up. Word of our breakup and the reasons behind it spread quickly in our circle. Men weren't eager to pursue someone known for being unfaithful, arrogant, and financially reckless. For the first time in her adult life, her phone stayed silent. While her life unraveled, I was quietly and steadily rebuilding mine. I took a leave from work, sold the apartment that carried the stain of her betrayal, and bought a small modern house across the city, a place she'd never seen, a place that was truly mine. I reconnected with old friends I had neglected during our relationship. I began working on a personal dream project, a piece of software I had wanted to build for years. I didn't date, didn't party, I just worked. On my house, on my project, and on myself. I was shaping a life of substance. A life that wasn't for show. A life that was real. Final update. It's now been a year since that dinner party. A year of quiet, focused, and incredibly productive work. The software I created, a logistics and project management tool for small businesses, took off. 6 months ago, I sold it to a bigger tech company for an amount that changed my life completely. I am now, by any measure, a wealthy man. I still work, but only on projects I care about. Ashley's life, in the same year, has been a slow, painful decline. After being evicted, she moved back with her parents. Her influencer career, built on an image of luxury she no longer lived, collapsed. She ended up taking a receptionist job at a dental office. Friends drifted away. Madison, once her closest ally, is now engaged to a wealthy older man and has cut her off entirely. I hadn't seen or spoken to Ashley in a year. I had blocked her everywhere, and she had no clue about my success until last week. A local business journal ran a feature on me with a photo of me in front of my new house and details about my company sale and net worth. 2 days later, an email arrived. Dave, it began. I saw the article. Congratulations. I'm so proud of you. It went on, long, rambling revisionist. She wrote about always believing in me, claiming she knew I was destined for success. She said our breakup was her greatest mistake, born of insecurity, and that she regretted it every single day. She said she had changed, grown, and was finally the woman I had always deserved. She ended with a simple, pleading line. Can we please talk? I miss my best friend that I read it twice. No anger, no pity, just nothing. The person who wrote that email was a stranger to me, a ghost from a past life. I thought about her boast at that dinner a year ago, the 10 men waiting theory, her arrogant certainty that she was the prize. And then I thought about the years she'd spent watching her own life collapse, while I had been carefully building something lasting. That I typed a short reply. The theory has been tested. The results are in. Please don't contact me again. That I hit send, blocked her email, and closed that chapter for good. Why revenge was never about a dramatic scene. It was about quiet, undeniable proof. She thought I was just a placeholder. But in the end, she was only a footnote. And now, she has a lifetime to sit back and watch me build a life without her.